Alright, what's going on, guys? July has been a pretty quiet month when it comes to news around Elden Ring Nightreign. We've been on repeat with the updates regarding the new Everdark Sovereign fights, but it was just announced a few days ago that the next rotation will begin on July 31st with Tricephalos Augur, Libra, and Caligo, so you have exactly 1 week to get caught up in case you missed any of the other ones. But while in-game news might have been slow, there has been a lot going on in regards to Elden Ring and FromSoftware in other places if you know where to look. We just covered the new leak about the next FromSoftware game after the Duskbloods codenamed FMC, and today we've got a lot of other stuff to talk about on the business side. We're going to go over these new numbers coming out about Elden Ring Nightreign as well as Elden Ring DLC, which are honestly just crazy. We're going to talk about Sony making even more moves on FromSoftware with their new investment, and then we're going to talk about the Elden Ring movie, because we've just gotten our first look at some of the cast, so we're going to break all of that down. But as we get started today, if you want to stay up to date on all things Elden Ring and FromSoftware, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and now let's get into it. We're going to be talking a lot about business stuff today, and although again like I said it's not direct in-game news, this stuff is very important to look at because it helps us see the landscape around these games, the reception, and how FromSoftware might choose to go about their next games. So Bandai Namco recently shared some sales numbers surrounding Elden Ring Nightreign, and here's what they had to say. That Elden Ring Nightreign has crossed 5 million players, as well as the Elden Ring DLC having reached the milestone of 10 million, which is honestly just crazy numbers. That brings the total of the Elden Ring franchise to over 45 million copies sold. And you know they're just swimming in money over there right now. Deservedly so. So if anybody had any doubts about Nightreign not selling because it was a multiplayer game, well, there you have the proof. Obviously it didn't sell as well as the base game Elden Ring did, but that was kind of a once-in-a-lifetime anomaly. 5 million copies on a spin-off is extremely impressive, and it hasn't even been 2 months yet. But to be completely honest, where my mind goes when looking at this is honestly wondering what that's going to look like for the Duskbloods, because that game is following suit to Nightreign, and that it's a multiplayer focused game, but it will not have the Elden Ring name attached to it to really back sales, and it will be exclusive on the Switch too. Those are both factors that are going to drastically reduce the number of sales in comparison to a game like Nightreign, which does make me worry that Duskbloods is not going to perform nearly as well as Nightreign, or potentially even the DLC for Nightreign. But this game does seem to be reusing a lot of assets from FromSoftware's other games, so I don't think it's as big of a project in terms of devoting manpower, and FromSoftware will definitely not be struggling monetarily, as they've also got the release of Elden Ring Tarnished Edition, which is going to pump those numbers up substantially as well, and isn't taking time away from development of their other games. And when we think about that, in context of the last video where we talked about the FMC leak, which claimed that the game after Duskbloods, whatever that is, whether it's Armored Core, whether it's some Dark Souls 3 remake, or something new entirely, could be playable next year. Maybe we do see 2 FromSoftware releases in 2026. Wishful thinking, I know, but with how much money they're making, it's certainly a possibility, and it would be very smart of them to be capitalizing on all the hype around their name right now. But speaking of capitalizing on the hype, Sony is apparently doing the same. Now we've been talking about Sony a lot over the last year, as they've been making a lot of moves, getting closer and closer to FromSoftware, whether that be by partnering with Kadokawa, the parent company of FromSoftware, or expanding their investments into the game side. It seems like their name is popping up more and more every time we talk about From, which brings us to this news story. Sony strikes strategic partnership with Elden Ring publisher Bandai Namco, acquires 2.5% stake. Acquisition solidifies years of collaboration over the years, including games. So let's dive into this. Sony has acquired a 2.5% stake in Elden Ring publisher Bandai Namco. Sony said the 16 million share acquisition forms a part of a broader strategic partnership with Bandai Namco, and will focus on expanding the fan community for IP, such as anime and manga around the world, and strengthening engagement. Sony said it has historically collaborated on various projects in the fields such as games, anime, and music with Bandai Namco, and plans to extend this collaboration to a broader range of areas. The two companies intend to implement initiatives including the expansion of works, as well as products and services based on IP developed by Bandai Namco, leveraging Sony's strengths in areas such as the production and distribution of anime and other video content, as well as merchandising, Sony said in a press release. Through this partnership, we aim to co-create an array of content and experiences that exceed expectations and deliver emotion to even more fans, alongside Bandai Namco Group, with its outstanding capacity for multi-directional expansion of diverse IP and deep connections with fans at real touchpoints, both domestically and internationally, said Sony's chief strategy officer, Toshimoto Mitomo. Okay, so what does that look like for us? Well, here's the thing to consider. In that, they don't specifically mention Elden Ring or video games. This investment by Sony focuses on expanding the array of experiences surrounding IP and lifetime value. Now, Bandai Namco is a very big company with lots of IPs, and of course Sony has worked a lot with them on other stuff not related to FromSoftware. But let's kind of read between the lines a little bit. Everything I just mentioned that is the aim of this partnership are the things that Bandai Namco historically has done for FromSoftware's games. They're the publisher for Elden Ring, they're the publisher for Armored Core, they were the publisher for the Dark Souls trilogy, and we don't yet know if whatever IP is coming next will be working with Bandai Namco as well. So, if they do, all of that publication and promotion will now be handled in partnership with Sony, at least in some capacity. Now, on its own, that's nothing crazy, but when you look at it in combination with what happened over this last year, with Sony becoming the biggest stakeholder in Kadokawa, the parent company of FromSoftware, we're now looking at, if FromSoftware does continue to work with Bandai Namco, Sony will be involved with virtually every single process of a FromSoftware game. Now, how that manifests, only time will tell, but it's something to think about. They've been kind of doing this slowly over the past few years, never really mentioning FromSoftware by name, but creating this big web where they're involved on all sides. Now, they've been very quiet, not really making demands, and if you're someone that doesn't like Sony, another thing to think about is that FromSoftware has been consistently saying, hey, we're expanding the scope of our own publishing for the last 4 years, so they may not be working with Bandai Namco much in the future. And honestly, I'm ready to see what that looks like, because I'm not a big fan of the way Bandai Namco has been promoting FromSoftware's games. They tend to wait till the last minute and then do a ton of stuff that really isn't all about the game, not to mention how much they spoil ahead of time. But anyways, what do you think about this new Sony acquisition? Do you think it's a threat to FromSoftware, or do you think FromSoftware IPs are kind of an afterthought? We'll just have to wait and see. Now, one thing I'm actually very surprised to not see Sony involved in is the Elden Ring movie, which, as we know, is being handled by A24 and directed by Alex Garland. Now, we've gotten little things, tiny bits of info about this movie, but overall we really don't know much about it. However, rumors have been popping up around the internet about who members of the suspected cast will be, and we have a few names. The first of which comes from The Insider, who reported, exclusive, Ben Whishaw in talks to join Kit Connor in Alex Garland's Elden Ring movie at A24. Now, I really didn't know who this guy was. I haven't seen many of his movies. He was in the new James Bond movies though, Skyfall and No Time to Die, though I really haven't watched those movies. Though when I watched both of those movies, they were kind of just on in the background, so I really couldn't tell you much about this dude's acting. Another actor that we've seen, as dropped in that headline, is Kit Connor, who just got done working with Alex Garland on Warfare. Now again, another name I don't really recognize, but I was looking through his IMDb page, and he has experience working on video games, such as A Plague Tale Requiem and Xenoblade Chronicles 3, so that's a good sign. But the third cast member that we now know of is Kaylee Spaney, who has also worked with Alex Garland recently. Now, I didn't watch Civil War, but I do recognize her work from Alien Romulus, and of course she was the lead in that film, and I thought it was good. So it is looking like the Elden Ring movie is getting some pretty high-level talent. You know, I'm still waiting to see if we're gonna get anybody that's like a household name star, but when this was announced, a lot of people were saying they would hope for that not to be the case, but we'll have to wait and see how many more cast members come out. But you guys let me know down in the comments, who do you think these actors will be playing? That's something to really think about. Personally, I can't really pinpoint any of them, but I'm curious to see what you guys think. Anyways though guys, that's gonna pretty much do it for the video today. I hope you enjoyed. A lot of small stories today that didn't really warrant a full video on their own, but we still needed to talk about. With all that though, be sure to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here, and I will catch you in the next one.